All right, Wex. So here we are. We talked about a few things we wanted to chop it up on before we hit record. And we were talking about asking for help, both in a spiritual sense and as well as a practical, worldly sense. So we talked about what we want for ourselves and for others. We talked about structure of transformation and expansion. And I would love to hear just how things are going for you, what you've been thinking about, and take it from there.
Yes, sir. Well, all those things, and I think where I'm coming from today, and I'm so glad that we got to connect today because I just listened back to my upcoming episode of Within the Game with Roger Burnley and the
Is that
live channeling of Wilhelm.
is that
And it's
episode
just,
104?
I believe it's 105.
105. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. And what's so cool about this episode, Kave, is that it's all spiritual. It's
Hmm.
just the spiritual. Um,
Unapologetically spiritual.
yeah, it really is. It really is unapologetic, but it's just so. I was listening back to myself and I can
Right.
hear my own curiosity and I can also hear the clarity in Roger, but definitely Wilhelm and the idea of channeling, dude. And it's so cool. It just fires me up. It fires me up because every time you and I do this, we're doing more and more of that channeling.
Hmm.
And it's so cool to do. It's so cool to listen to others, channel, and also really cool to practice.
Yeah. So tell me what you mean by channeling. It might mean different things to different people. I would love to share with you what I think of it and hear what you think of it and then hear from our listeners too.
Yeah, same. I'm fascinated by it. I really am. It fascinates me and it also excites me. So when I think of channeling, I think of channeling your higher self,
Mm.
meaning your true self, meaning your spirit, meaning the bigger version of yourself, not just the human here and now version, but
That's
the
right.
the version that might connect with the divinity and connect with collective consciousness. Consciousness is a good way to say it because
Hmm.
it's kind of never ending,
Mm.
and and that to me is cool to think about, right? Um, that higher self stuff. So when I think of channeling, I think of listening and getting downloads from the higher self,
Hmm.
and then like you actually become a channel because you're allowing information to come through. And usually channels that I know of that I'm fans of get into this really interesting meditative state.
Hmm.
It's like this allowing state, and then all of a sudden the channel comes through, and it's so cool. It's so articulate and smooth and clear and just knowledge, and
Yeah.
it's just this free flow stream of consciousness that comes through. That's what I mean by channeling.
Yeah, what comes to mind for me as you're describing that is a few things. First, I think of contrast, as we like to
Hmm.
discuss, and the opposite of channeling something could be like choking it off, for instance, right? Like
Hmm.
if
Yeah.
I am breathing, then air is being channeled through my airway and through my lungs and through my bloodstream, etc., right? But the opposite of a channel there would be a choke point, a suffocation, and I
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of quiet claustrophobia, a lot of quiet desperation
Yeah.
in all of our lives, and that with the theme of this channel being it's therapeutic, the idea of opening up to greater possibilities than the ones that are obviously facing us in any given moment is very promising. So that a channel, the way you're describing it, seems to be able to do that. Seems to be able to open up to possibilities beyond the ones that are immediately available to us in any given moment.
Yes. Yes. And what's really interesting, and going back to the spiritual world,
Hmm.
is this access to the Akashic records.
Hmm.
And the channels that I know of that I'm fans of. We mentioned Wilhelm, Roger Burnley channels Wilhelm, but Esther Hicks channels Abraham, and I believe these channels can create this access point to the Akashic record. And basically what the Akashic record is, in my best understanding and most
Yes.
clear way to say it, is
Tell us.
the history of everything.
Mm. And how about
Just the
how about the future of everything?
and the future of everything. Yeah, just this record of what has happened and what will happen.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting to think about the what will happen part, right? Because that
Yeah.
seems like it's not created yet. But looking backwards, you know, these channels are able to tap into this like infinite intelligence that
Exactly.
seems to be there. So
So another thing that
yeah.
comes to mind for me is how to address these things in the most responsible way possible. You see, uh, spirituality has always had a kind of ambiguous relationship with science, logic, rationality. And for cynics, for people who are kind of have a knee jerk reaction to calling anything that's not physical, materialist, realist, not calling any of those things, not calling any of those things real, calling them
Hmm.
all scams or BS.
Hmm.
Then there's like this thing that I'm concerned that they're missing out on by not being open to the possibility of things like channeling. And so that's why I like to give channeling as broad of a definition as possible. For instance, this question of getting over oneself, right? If a channel is, like you said, able to get out of their own way
Hmm.
to let something else through,
Yeah.
well, that is a pretty reasonable way to describe it. To say, well, there's like something trying to come through each and every person,
Yeah.
but that the person's conditioning, the person's ego, the person's commitments, often subconscious, are preventing that person, holding that person back from their mission, from their campaign, from their purpose and their reason for being here.
I think the number one thing you said there is ego. I think
Yeah.
that's the challenge with all of us, is to play with the ego while we have it, while we're in our
Yes.
game, while we're winning, while we're, you know, working on winning, while we're visualizing what we want or
Exactly.
manifesting. The ego is great for that. But then when it's time to channel, it's time to let the ego step aside and let
Hmm.
the true voice, the higher self, come through.
Hmm.
And that's what's really cool about the channels that I mentioned, specifically, you know, Roger Burnley, because that's coming up next. He's able to step aside,
Yeah.
and even like when he's done channeling, he's like, "How was that?" You know, because he almost like he like left for a little bit, you know,
Right. You
and
gotta
he's like,
check.
"I'll have to." Yeah, he like checked out for a second, you know, but totally checked in at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's a duality that I just actually was researching recently on that notion of being checked out and checked in. And there is amazing science behind it. There's very solid
Mm,
ways to describe it in a coherent way,
cool.
including descriptions of neurology. For instance, the question of someone who's in a flow state, right?
Hmm.
Someone who
Yep.
is on stage performing, doing music, and they are not thinking, but they are conscious and lucid. And so, in a way, they're not in control of the situation, right? They're not trying to control the outcome. And yet, they are also in supreme control. They're just going with the flow. They're like the best acts of music and sports have this
Yeah.
kind of dualistic nature to it.
Yes. And I have to mention a reference to a movie real quick, because I just
Yeah,
watched this
please,
movie the other night and
please.
it totally inspired me. Um, this guy named Alex Honnold, he's like a free climber. He
Yeah, the free
recently
solo.
climbed
Yeah,
the
he's
free
this was
solo. Yeah, did
time
you
they're
watch that?
building in China or something.
Well, yes, but the movie that I think The movie I'm referencing is all about his 2017 free
El
climb,
Cap, El Cap.
El Capitan in Yosemite. El Cap, yeah, in Yosemite. Dude,
Right?
I mean, and for if we ever publish this, like for anyone listening, please go watch that. I mean, what's cool about that, first of all, the way I'll tie it to everything in a second, but I think it's the greatest athletic achievement of all time for any sport, for any athlete. And that's a big statement. I know that, but that was amazing to see him train for that and then to go basically. And for anyone listening who's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
It's this guy, Alex Honnold, decided to free climb a 3,000-foot vertical cliff called El Capitan with no rope. Right.
Unreal.
So
Unreal.
at the very top, and getting close to the top, any mistake is life or death. Any mistake. And he found flow state, and he he became one with that mountain. And it's on tape, right? The camera crew was there, and we got to witness it. And it's so cool how it took him a while, right? And he made a lot of mistakes in training, but each mistake could be his death, right? So he had to figure out every problem on that mountain, and he did, and he did, and it was so cool to see. So I referenced that because did he channel his higher self right there? Did he allow? Did he? I think so. I think so. I think he allowed himself to find flow state, to be in flow state, and to become one with that mountain, and to not let any sort of fear get in his way. He talks about being afraid, but it's not. He was able to not let it deter him, and also he went through the fear. And I think that's super relatable to this conversation, which is this flow state, this channeling. Sometimes channeling can be a little bit fearful. I was sitting there this morning, so inspired from Roger Burnley and Wilhelm that I tried a little bit, and I kind of stopped. It was almost too much. It was very, very powerful. And so there's a little fear there that you know, maybe fear for the good. Maybe it was so good that I was a little afraid of it,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
get that. I get that.
or so big or so expansive or so beautiful or so limitless that it's almost intimidating. Maybe intimidating is a good word too. Um, and just like Alex, how he looked at that mountain and he said, "Yeah, that's a little intimidating. No one's in history has ever done it. I'm gonna do it. Let's go." And he did.
And I think that word intimidating you're using is also related to the word uh, inspired and also in awe of something, something being
Yeah.
awesome, something being so big that we're often we're often self-constricting. We're often maintaining ourselves in the familiar, the self, the ego, the conditioning, and that these are the kinds of larger than life experiences which can as I love to think about, they can be physical experiences, emotional experiences, mental, financial, social, and moral experiences that end up being bigger than the conditions and the experiences that we're normally accustomed to. And that's the kind of thing that gets our attention, and then it gets the attention of others to whatever degree we're able to share those experiences with other people. But they often do evade um, description. They're often so hard to put into words, which
Right.
is why I think channeling is one of these things that's kind of like a gift that is underappreciated.
It
Um,
really
you
is.
know,
I think it is
tell
too.
me more. Tell
I,
me more.
I was always a little bit okay. So about the underappreciation part, I was always confused why more people didn't know about it because it's so cool, or maybe it is looked upon as BS. It totally probably is, by a lot of people. But for me, I'm excited about it because I do think it is tapping into all these things that are available to all of us at all times. The flow state, the clarity, the higher self, the infinite, the collective consciousness, the we. I love how a lot of channels talk in we. It's a collective, and I think that's cool. I think I'm excited about that, because what that means is that we're not alone. We're never alone.
Yeah.
Whether it's our future self, our past self, our ancestors, our angelic team, our our guardian angel. I think all those things are possibilities, and they're cool, and that's why you can hear the excitement in my voice,
I
because
can, yeah.
I'm excited about all those things. Those things are cool.
I think the epidemic of loneliness is something that simply can't be ignored, and that we're at a point in our individual and collective lives that anything that might help needs to be considered and entertained as a possibility for a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love your theme of it's therapeutic, because there is a lot of pain in this experience, emotional, physical, you know, um, all kinds of pain, financial, and relationship. I mean, we can go on and on, but what are we doing about that? And are we using that pain as fuel? And and can we use that pain to help us catapult into ascension? And I think that's kind of the key, right? It's not just to like heal from pain and get relief. That's definitely part of it, 100% part of it. People in pain. I've been in excruciating pain before. So yes, the first thing is to get relief from the pain. But then it's also to be like, well, that was for me somehow. That pain was for me. How do I use that pain? What do I need to learn about myself, or what do I need to learn about the world with that pain? And not just say F you to the pain, which I think a lot of people do,
That's
including
right.
me, by the way, including me, you
Yeah.
know. But my higher self would tell me, use it, just like all
That's
the
right.
other emotions. Use them.
The, the word that comes to mind for me here is redemption. The redemption of a ticket, a check, is the cashing in of that check, right? To redeem this lottery
To
ticket,
redeem.
And so the idea that you can redeem something bad actually means that the bad thing is a good thing that has not yet had its potential manifest.
Yeah,
And that's what anti-fragility is. That's what post-traumatic growth is.
I
So
love that. I
for
love
me,
that term.
right,
Yeah.
right, for me, and you helped
PTG.
PTG, and I think about post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD) compared to post-traumatic growth adaptation
Yeah,
(PTGA),
love
and
it.
right, and so for me, to make this kind of thing so practical, we say, well, if channeling is one way that an individual or a collective can get out of their own way, get out of their small self, the practical benefit of it is that that opens up the possibility of being more receptive and more accepting of the potential that the bad things that happen to us can be leveraged by us rather
Yep.
than continued to be a source of what doesn't kill me makes me weaker. Because that's the way most people are taught to think, that we should avoid trauma and that we should say F you to the pain, because the pain is actually making us weaker, which is the post traumatic stress model. The post traumatic stress model says what doesn't kill me makes me weaker, and the post traumatic growth model says what doesn't kill me makes me stronger.
Mm. And hopefully this is all therapeutic. I mean, this conversation and these ideas. I mean, it is therapeutic for me. I want you to know that.
Yeah,
Every time we
same,
connect and we drop in like this, it's
same.
therapeutic for me. And I encourage others too to find what's therapeutic for them. I mean, including, you know, moving the body and deep breathing, expanding the lungs. All that stuff is therapeutic too. But this this is kind of like spiritual therapy almost, like exploring these topics and making them relatable and making them pragmatic, but also staying expansive at the same time and leaving room for different ideas, you know, and that allowing curiosity to take the wheel for a minute, you know, and drive.
That's right, my man. So, listen, I think this could be a good time to close it up for now, and let's continue very soon, okay?
I love it, bro. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Talk soon, brother.
Okay, peace.
Bye.